Thank you all for coming. My name is Jerry Buckland. I'm the Dean at Menno Simons College. We are a Mennonite college at the University of Winnipeg that is a part of Canadian Mennonite University. And we offer programs in conflict resolution and international development studies. And we're so pleased to be the co-host of the Hopper Lecture this year. University of Guelph is always the principal host, and then there's a partner university that is the co-host, and Menno Simons College is the co-host this year. The Hopper Lecture Series is named after David Hopper, who was the first director of the International Development Research Centre in Ottawa. And the goal of the lecture is to help Canadians better understand issues of international development. So we're really pleased to host this event, but we're thrilled to have Dr. Anil Gupta here. We've had an opportunity to get to know him a little bit today. He spent the day with us. We had lunch with him. And I have to say, we've been so impressed, so interested. And just a couple of anecdotes. I actually crossed paths with Dr. Gupta in Bangladesh back in the mid-1980s. Of course, neither of us knew one another, but we had some common territory that we traveled, including Mennonite Central Committee's Dhaka office. So that was interesting to learn about that. I was also thrilled to learn about his rural treks that he takes in India on a regular basis, where he goes out and he visits rural people, and he does this in a really amazing way. And so I've already asked him, can I go on the next trek? So we're really thrilled that Dr. Gupta is here. I'd like to thank, however, Dr. Kirit Patel, our professor at Menno Simons College, who is really the key person that brought both Dr. Gupta and the Hopper Lecture here tonight at Menno Simons College. So thank you very much, Dr. Patel. I'd also like to thank Joel Marion, who very carefully has coordinated this lecture, and with the assistance of Madeline Goodwin. So I'd like to thank those folks. And there's many other people that have helped. In addition to our fabulous presenter, which will be followed by a short question and answer period, I wanted to point out that there are two university presidents who are very much involved in this presentation. And I think this is a unique situation. So Canadian Mennonite University President Cheryl Pauls, who I'll introduce in a minute, will be introducing Dr. Gupta, and the University of Winnipeg President Annette Trimby will be giving some final remarks at the end of the presentation. So I'm really thrilled that we have their participation in this event. So I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to ask President Pauls to come up and introduce Dr. Gupta.
Good evening. Since we're talking about grassroots tonight, my name is Cheryl, and it's certainly a wonderful thing to be here with all of you this evening. My task, as you've been told, is to introduce Dr. Gupta, the lecturer, as well as the lecturer this evening. And I'm going to begin by asking you this question: what are you doing here? Now you might think, that's a rather strange question to be asking. Isn't your role to welcome us and thank us for coming and tell us the wonderful evening that's in store for us? Certainly all those things are true. And yet I ask you this question to wake you up a little bit. Because regardless of how imaginative and creative and active you think you already are, you're about to find out a whole lot more about activity that can be awakened from within you with the lecture this evening. Now, this notion of what are you doing here is a good question, good in the sense that it can be heard in more than one way. It's got a profound depth of life's largest meanings and greatest complexities and possibilities. It also can move into the most mundane activity and motivation. And I think it's the capacity to slip back and forth between what's profound and what's mundane that makes Dr. Gupta so special. You might be here because you're attracted by the expressions in the title: Empathetic Innovation, Inclusive Development, Grassroots Innovators. There's such a depth of resonance and expression that we could unpack all evening before we even get to the content. What are you doing here? Perhaps you just simply answered yes to the inclinations in what seems a rhetorical question. Can we learn from grassroots innovators and want to be pushed in what you can hear as you wander about in the roots and the grasses of your everyday lives? Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Gupta this afternoon, and I can assure you we're in for a fine evening. He's a person of ideas, an abundance of ideas, really good ideas. His ideas are good in the sense that they're good for more than one thing. You think they're answering one question, and you realize all kinds of other answers pop up and possibilities as you follow them through. They're good because they don't aspire to be grandiose, and because they don't aspire to be grandiose, they actually have the greatest applicability elsewhere. They're good because they're practical, they're useful, they're good for something immediately. At the same time, they point far beyond themselves and emerge from the simple joy of taking good care of people, enjoying them, and all living things and matter around us. Most of his ideas, in some sense, have an agricultural root, but they don't stop there. Like good food means good for everything else, and that happens with his ideas as well. Some of the hallmarks of our time are collaboration and innovation, and Dr. Gupta certainly is a person who shows that the best of innovation comes from enjoying people and collaborating well together. His good ideas happen because he lives life at a walking pace. I don't know how he gets all his 250 and who knows how many more publications done in his life, but he spends lots of time walking about for weeks every summer and every winter, often with students, part of journeys on foot to celebrate creativity at the grassroots, often together with students, and to share in the creativity that's encountered. He's also a poet. If you read through his list of publications, you'll find some lovely alliteration in some titles, such as The Conundrum of Creativity, Compensation, and Conservation in India, or one of my favorites, Frugal, Friendly, and Flexible. Dr. Anil Gupta is a senior professor at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, the top management and policy research institute in the Asia-Pacific region. He is a founder for lots and lots of organizations, those that deal with research and initiatives in sustainable technologies, in innovation foundations on the national and international level, and also very important to the stimulus of the Honeybee organization, Honeybee Network, and I would highly recommend that you take a look at the work of that. His work certainly serves as someone who is one of the most significant academic and Gandhian activists and has been recognized for this by the Padma-shree Award. It's the highest civil award conferred by the President of India. You could consider it similar to the Order of Canada in this country. Jerry had asked me to say something about the connection with why CMU would be interested in this particular set of lectures. One of the ways CMU has defined its work is through 4 commitments: educating for peace, justice, learning through thinking and doing, generous hospitality and radical dialogue, and modeling invitational community. My short time with Dr. Gupta this afternoon demonstrated that he embodies all of these features, brings them together in ever new and exciting ways, and I know will awaken new possibilities for all of us this evening. And so with pleasure and anticipation, I turn the evening over to you, Dr. Gupta.
Good evening, friends. Namaskar. I must admit that this is a very evocative occasion for me because Kirit was the architect of the Honeybee Network for the first 10 years. And I was telling him at the tea time that today is my examination. I am going to be judged whether I deserve all the respect and affection that I got from him and Shailesh all these years. Honeybee Network, in some sense, symbolizes a spirit of cross-pollination, of learning from people, of not making people feel shortchanged, of not keeping all the surplus that we extract with ourselves and share some of it with others. So if you see that logo, a nameless, faceless person comes in contact with the network and gets an identity. And this process of giving voice, visibility, and velocity to nameless, unknown, unsung heroes of our society is what we have been trying to do for all these 25 years. While I was coming here, on the way I saw a board of Bühler. Bühler is a very famous company, manufacturing equipments in farm machinery and many other things. And for the last 1 year, they have been in dialogue with us, and just a few days back, we have almost finalized an agreement where Bühler wanted a rice milling machine for small-scale farmers to be developed. And they did search all around the world, and they found that there was a grassroots innovator Kalpesh Gajjar from Mehsana, who had developed oil milling machines. Now, oil milling is not very close to rice milling, but the point was that this machine had achieved 40% saving in energy. And what Kalpesh had done was he had, normally there are three systems. One is motive force, one is expeller, and then one is separator. So he had amalgamated all the three into one, and they found this design to be extremely efficient. So said maybe he's a good designer actually. So it was not so much in terms of what Kalpesh had done, but what he was capable of doing that brought Bühler and Honeybee Network together. So that is an example where large corporations are now trying to see whether there is a common ground with the common people. And can they learn something from common people? A question that I have been asked many times since morning, what can large farms, what can large corporations learn from grassroots innovation? So I said, let me begin with this question. Can large farms learn from small farmers? Can large corporations learn from common people? And I think that they can. But for that, we need to think of a framework of what you said very rightly, collaboration. So I have visualized 4 situations. And you might know that most corporations around the world are now trying to use what is popularly called as open innovation. Open innovation essentially meaning seeking ideas from outside. So there are 2 situations. You have inside out, that means I share my knowledge with others. Outside in, that is I source knowledge from outside. Most companies today are sourcing ideas from outside. So they have competitions, they have crowdsourcing, they have many mechanisms. Sometimes they pay for these ideas, sometimes they don't. But the essential point that they are realizing is that innovation is not equal to R&D, or R&D is not equal to innovation. They are realizing that despite huge budgets for R&D, they still need ideas from outside. So Procter & Gamble, for example, in 2009, their chairman gave a speech which is available on the net for you to read. And he said that by 2012-13, we should have 50% new product leads coming from outside. And they did achieve that. More than $240 million worth of sales they had last year from the last before year from the products whose ideas came from outside the company. Why would they do that? Why would large corporations seek knowledge from common people on the street or individuals? And one reason why they are doing it is because when you work together for a long time in R&D teams, you tend to converge a lot. You tend to see each other's viewpoint too much. And the result is that diversity is lost somehow. And you're not able to think as differently, as creatively as one ought to think. There's another reason, and the reason is search for frugality. So large number of people are realizing after 2009 market slowed down that the purchasing power with the consumers all over the world, including in the developed countries, has gone down. And if you have to reach their pockets, if you have to tap their pockets, you need to be able to provide product and services at a cost much less than what you were doing earlier. And that's a good thing. I believe in frugality, and frugal future is what I will talk about a little later in detail. If that is the case, then how do we do that? So as I said, there are 4 frameworks. One is when both learning from outside is high and sharing of one's own knowledge as a public good is also high. There are very few companies, though. There's only one which comes to my mind, which is Tesla, which opened its patents, all the patents, in fact, for electrical car to the world at large. Why did they open? They were leaders in the world. They had one of the best technology for the battery, for storing power, to run cars for long distance, and a green technology, electrical cars, no pollution. They did it because they realized that unless large number of, or very many manufacturers come up, there will not be enough charging stations. Nobody's going to set up charging station only for one company. Now, to be able to have enough charging stations, you need to have more manufacturers. More manufacturers can only come in the market if they have technology, access to technology, and they are the leaders in the technology. Now, that's a very different way of looking at your strength. It's a new way. It's a new way forward where people are saying, I will share my knowledge as a public good with the world at large so they can compete with me. They can compete with me. Did you hear that right? People want to create competition for them because they will then always be ahead of others because they are the ones who are laying the rules of the foundation. So I have also used a word here, DBDB, which is the Hindi acronym, Dil Bada, Dimag Bada. So your heart is big and your mind is big. Only those people can share more with others and learn more from others. The people with small heart and small mind will never be able to do that. So if you believe that your knowledge needs to be shared openly, all my papers are copyright free. I don't care whether anybody uses them or cites them or not, doesn't cite them. That's not of interest to me. What is interesting is if people will read them and maybe they will be able to develop better ideas, I can learn from that. And I would wish to learn from that. So we need to think about that. This is the PNG cell, the first one, this one, the low inside out but more high outside in. That's what Procter & Gamble does. That's what Siemens does. That is what GE does. Those who don't take much from outside but share a lot are pollinators. Not many companies are like that. But this is the concept which is valid. You can share your knowledge with outside. People can use those platform technologies to build their own solutions. So to some extent, one can say Linux is one example, which did not take much to begin with. Trevold, who was the inventor of this, shared his server program openly with everybody else. People built upon it, developed it further, and today more than 35% share in server market belongs to Linux. That was a good example. And those who neither learn from outside nor share with others are ostrich. They are doomed. They will not survive. The world will not welcome them. So if that is the case, how do we go about learning? Now, all of you have refrigerators in your house. How many of you have realized that refrigerator also produces heat? Isn't it? There is a compressor in the refrigerator which produces heat. Do you know of any company in the world which uses that heat? Anybody? No. Now just look at this. All the companies in the world have not realized that refrigerator also produces heat. And in this age when we are talking about global warming, we are talking about energy conservation, how can you allow that heat to go waste? So what did this young fellow do? He's from a small college in Gandhinagar. He put a heat exchanger alongside the compressor and made on the top a hot chamber which gives you hot water and gives you a space for keeping food warm. And when you take the heat away from the compressor has to work less, its life gets extended, and actually it consumes less energy now, 18% less energy. So less energy, more output. This is the model of innovation for future. This is what we call as the Indian model of innovation, where you use less inputs, you get more out of less for more people. MLM, as Dr. Mashelkar calls it often. So we need to be emphasizing a way forward in which we will use less energy and get more output. And that will lead to a whole range of innovations, which unfortunately so far have not come out from large corporations. Because they have so much resources, they are not used to thinking in a constrained environment. That's where the strength of grassroots innovator lies. Because they have so little with themselves, what will they leverage? They cannot leverage material resources which they don't have much. They can leverage their mind. They have abundant mind and big heart, both of which go well together. So this is the process. This is the direction in which we are going. And I use the word inclusive. The reason why I use the word inclusive is because there are forces in our society, anywhere in the world, including Canada, in this region, which lead to exclusion. So some regions are excluded because population density is very low. Ecological conditions are very harsh. Soil may not be very productive. Such regions, market don't go. I was told at lunchtime that many stores closed down because purchase was not taking place there in some of the Aboriginal areas. And when stores closed down, you had to find new ways of providing goods to them. And one way was, let them make those themselves. So at lunch, I saw a soup which had squash, maize, beans, and based on a production process which has been supported by the university for about a year and a half now. Now, that's a good model, where those who are consumers are now becoming providers. That is the model of development we are looking for. Consumers become providers, providers of ideas, providers of product, providers of services. So we reverse the process of development, which for such a long time has been top-down, outside in, rather than inside out. There are sectors which also get bypassed. So for example, this I am wearing is a handloom. Now, after agriculture in India, the sector which employs the largest number of people is handloom, khadi. And hand woven, hand spun, then it becomes khadi, otherwise handloom. And since there's not much technological change which has taken place, this sector doesn't attract a lot of investment, doesn't attract a lot of professionals, doesn't attract a lot of companies to work with them, designers. So people remain poor because they don't have much purchasing power. So certain sectors get bypassed. Seasons, certain seasons, of course you all know, when there's too much of snow, many regions are not accessible. Just like in our country, when there's a lot of flood, many parts of eastern India are not accessible. So there are seasons in which situations become excluded. People get excluded. They are not able to, we can't reach them. Social segments, likewise, who live in those areas, and skills for which there is no market. So how do we really, what is the driver which will help us to overcome these exclusions and generate inclusive innovation? And I will submit today before you that, for reflection, that please think about this possibility. There's a beautiful word in Sanskrit and many other Indian languages, and I suppose in other languages of the world as well, called as samvedana. Sam means equal, Vedana means pain. When I feel somebody else's pain as intensely as that person experiences it, it doesn't remain that person's pain, it becomes my pain. Sajanshilta, which means creativity, born out of internalizing the pain of someone else, is what we can call, for want of a better word, empathetic innovation. Innovations which are born out of my internalizing the pain of someone else. Then I'm not doing anything for them. I'm solving my own pain. I'm addressing my own problem. I'm trying to solve my own problem. It's my problem now. It's not anybody else's problem. So this takes away the entire patronizing attitude that is so dominant in developmental literature. Everybody is trying to help somebody else. No, we are trying to help ourselves. I'm doing it to maintain my sanity. Just because this pain is unbearable, I need to get it out of my way, and the only way I can get out of it way is by finding a new solution. So seeds of new ideas can be sprouted by this sensitivity. And there are some contrast I wanted to pose before you, which modern world is somehow not able to grapple with. So there are many communities in our country which invite birds to their homes. In my culture, in our culture, in my home, the first bread that we cook, we don't eat. Because it's supposed to be given to the birds, to the animals, to someone else. Every day, at breakfast time, at lunch time, we have to feed the birds before I can start our day, or before we can take food ourselves. Every day it happens. And millions of houses do that, not just one or two. So we are inviting birds to our place. But then, what do modern houses do? What my institute does, it puts a barrier for birds to come and sit on the top of the air conditioner. First they put the spikes, and birds could find a way of living on the spikes, so the spike didn't work. So now they have put a plate, and I'm sure nature will find a way of overcoming even that barrier, because nature is always ahead of us. Now look at this contrast. There's a culture which collects grains in our villages, North Gujarat, for instance, and Saurashtra. There are chabutras, there are platforms where the whole community collects grains and feeds the birds on this platform. Very considerate view where birds become a part of our sentient life. And then there are cultures where we try to avoid them. So is there a way in which we can amalgamate that? And that's a very interesting model of doing that. So this is a bridge made of roots of the trees, pulled from two sides of the river in Meghalaya, northeast. Cherrapunji district. Cherrapunji receives the highest rainfall in the world, 35,000 millimeter. 35,000 millimeter. Now, in that region, people decided to make this bridge. But what would make this bridge possible? They had many models of making rope bridge, brick bridge, different kinds of bridges they could have made. Everybody else in the world was making those bridges. Why did they have to separate, distinguish themselves? Why did they have to search new ways of doing it? Because of the culture. Culture triggers curiosity. The first trigger for a new idea does not come from technology, does not come from other mechanisms, it comes from culture. Once culture has triggered a question, we want to make a bridge but which is sustainable, low entropy or no entropy, then you search for technology. And then, if that technology requires group action, you need to develop institutional mechanism. So I have argued that technology is like word, institutions are like grammar, and culture is like thesaurus. variation on the theme. We need all the three. Sustainability is out of question. It's not possible without blending the technology, the institutions, and the culture. That's the first lesson that we learned in our life, in our search for sustainable solutions. And let me give you some other examples of institutions, how people cope with these dilemmas that arise in the process of development. So we were walking in West Bengal, Purulia and Bankura. We came across these beautiful terracotta horses lying under a tree. So I asked the potters of the village, why did you keep such beautiful terracotta horses under a tree? Somebody could take them away, somebody could break them. Potters by that time knew that I was a professor, so said, Professor, you have done a mistake. I said, what mistake have I done? We haven't kept the beautiful ones, we have kept the best ones. Best ones. Why did you keep the best one under a tree? I asked. They said, so that when our children walk by this street, they know what the current standard of the best is. They must do better. Open source standards of excellence. Find me a book on management which has this lesson. There isn't a book. But this lesson comes from a community of potters, otherwise economically disadvantaged people. But what a great lesson that they taught me that day, and all of us who were in the Shodhyatra, a learning walk, that you can create open source standard of excellence. I always believe that expecting less from our friends and from our younger generation is a crime. A teacher cannot commit. As a teacher, I must say that our duty is to expect more and even more from our students. We must push them to know their limits, because they don't know what their limits are, actually. And that's what this committee is trying to do, to push the young people to discover their limits and go beyond them. Another institution we came across in Sikkim, where we are going to have our next Shodhyatra. Shodhyatra refers to the walks that we do every summer, every winter. In summer, we go to the places which are hot, very heated places, temperature up to 47, 48, 49 degrees centigrade. And in winter, we go to the places which are cold. So this is a Himalayan region, very cold. We are going to have walk from 28 January to 3rd of February. And there, I had gone earlier with my students, and we came across a very interesting institution. The institution is, on a particular day in a year, everybody sprouts grains in their home. The ritual is that you have to collect 9 grains from 9 different neighbors. So imagine that you got to the first neighbor, he gave you beans. Second neighbor also had beans, so you can't collect it now. Third neighbor also had beans, you can't collect it now. You have to go to the fourth one maybe, who had maize or some wheat, and then the next one. Till you find 9 different grains, you have to go on calling on your neighbors. A wonderful way of renewing your neighborhood interactions. Once a year, you are trying to now perform this ritual, which requires you to collect 9 sprouted grains from 9 neighbors. Wonderful way of building communities. Wonderful way of building relationships, renewing relationship. Otherwise, you may not have seen them for many months. So there are institutional innovations, there are technological innovations, there are educational innovations, and there are cultural creativity, cultural innovation. Honeybee Network focuses on all the 4, and I'll give you examples from all the 4. This is an example of a technological innovation. A very simple example to understand. $100 windmill. So this windmill, as you can see here, bamboo, on which these 2 brothers, Mehtar Hussain and Mushtaq Ahmed in Assam, northeast of our country, made a windmill to run this hand pump. Why they wanted to run a hand pump with a windmill? Because they wanted to pump water for a small paddy field. Where is the innovation? Windmills we have known for ages. The innovation lies in asking 2 questions which they asked, which many of us never ask. The first question they asked, does it matter whether I irrigate my paddy field in 4 hours or 40 hours? Think of it carefully. Actually, plants don't need water, they need moisture. So if you give the same amount of water or less amount of water in 40 hours, it's good for the plant. Less nutrients will leach, less nutrients will go down with the water. So it is healthier. Plant will be growing better. Second question they asked, does it matter whether water comes in a spurt, because hand pump has a single valve, so it comes out and goes off and comes, or it comes smoothly? The answer was plant doesn't care. So they did not put a gearbox. Gearbox is very difficult to maintain, very costly item, so it became a frugal innovation. Now think of it. The 2 heuristics we have learned from this are maximizing output per unit of time is not always good. Generally good, but not always. There are cases where less output per unit of time is better, as this case of water shows us. Second, smoother flow is not always better than irregular flow. So in many industrial plants, some of you might know about boilers in the chemical plant, for example. And a lot of optimization is done using fluid dynamics to make this fluid smoother. For all that you know, when you cook the food, you stir the pot when you mix some spices. And you don't stir them uniformly. And maybe that is where lies the secret of a particular aroma that you get. So it is not necessary that for getting the best taste, for getting the best outcome, and kitchen is in any way lab of chemistry. Where else will we do more experiment than kitchen? You were talking about food. The first chemical lab was set up in the kitchen in the world whenever kitchen was created. And we have learned so much from the kitchen that regular flows, sequence, all of that may make a lot of difference. So the heuristics learned from grassroots innovations can be applied to totally different domains. From grassroots innovation to large corporations, we can learn. So one should think about 4 levels at which we can learn from innovation. Artifactual, from windmill to windmill. So in this case, we went and built another windmill for salt workers in Gujarat. And these people who are among the poorest people in Gujarat, it was a steel mill, windmill, because wind velocity is high. So this is artifactual, from the same form to similar form. Analogic, using windmill as a metaphor. Heuristic, the lessons underlying that innovation, which I can apply to different domain. And fourth, Gestalt, where a combination of factors, technology, institutions, culture, all of them are learned, and that becomes replicable, or that is applied to another context. So grassroots innovation should not be seen as epitome of only tinkering, or as something which has only led to small solution. That's why I don't like the term jugaad, anytime many of you might have heard about. That is getting around the problem. What these people have done is experimented systematically and tried to solve the problem. So another few examples. Today in agriculture sector, a question was asked, what can large farms learn from small farmers? And I would say they will learn that when you use big machinery, heavy machinery, it compacts the soil becomes inert, doesn't breathe. That's not very good for agriculture. So what do you need? You need small machinery, lighter machinery. So if you have a grape garden and you want to have good wine, then the roots must breathe. And they can only breathe when you don't compact the soil too much. So this will be a very good device. Motorcycle-based plowing machine will be very good for grape gardens. It does all the operations that you need, tilling, sowing, whatever you want to do, and without much weight. And there are so many variations for different conditions. In fact, now this technology is being transferred to Kenya, where a lot of farmers don't till their land because they don't have devices for plowing. So this is going to help Kenyan farmers. This is another interesting example. Some of you might have seen the film 3 Idiot, a very popular film. And the producer of that film incorporated 2 innovations, grassroots innovations from our database into the film, one of which was this one, where this innovator, as you can see, has a small flour mill on the top of his scooter. So people who are very poor buy every day some grains. They don't have the capacity to buy for 1 week or 1 month. When you buy only half a kg of grain, no flour mill will grind it. So this flour mill mounted on the scooter comes to your door, grinds the small quantity of grain, goes to the next person. Good, very efficient. A new service model. But service model which makes the life even of that poor person easier, because they don't have to now, after a whole day's work, again grind the grain for making a bread. They can get it ground quickly. A washing machine on the scooter for that matter. So let me show you, this is this interesting idea, interesting innovation, which will be of interest to you. Let us see.
नाव का इंतजार मुझे गवारा न था, मुझे मेरे प्यार से मिलना ही था। मेरी बेकरारी ने मुझे आविष्कारी बना दिया। पर प्यार को भी आविष्कार का सहारा लेना ही पड़ता है। आविष्कार ही मेरी नूर का नूर है, नई खोज ही मेरी जिंदगी का जुनून है। माई टेक्नोलॉजी।
Now, Mr. Saidullah, at the age of 70, wanted to cross a river, couldn't afford a boat, developed a solution where a cycle runs on road and as well as in the water, amphibious cycle. Way back in 70s. We discovered him very late in 90s, but he had done that in 70s. And a solution had evolved not just to meet his need, but the need of many other people. Unfortunately, this technology did not go very far in the marketplace because not many firms showed interest. This is very useful when villages and when the settlements get marooned in the flood and you want to deliver, let us say, food packets to the poor people or medicines or milk for the children. Cycle can be very handy. You can go between the settlements in Bangladesh and India and deliver it to people. But solution is existing there and it has worked very well. Let me give another example how we can learn and change the whole paradigm of cooking. I'm deliberately choosing examples of food. Now look at this kitchen. All of us have gas in our kitchen. And when we put the utensils on the gas, what happens? Some of the heat around the vessel goes into the atmosphere. Do we use this waste heat? No. But what is this person doing? She's Jyoti from Andhra Pradesh. She put a small shelf here on which she puts dried paddy panicles. Panicles means the ears of paddy where the grain has not yet been taken out from the husk. So when they get heated up, the rate at which the husk expands is different from the rate at which the rice grain expands. So later on when she thrashes them, she beats them to get the grain out, she has to use much less energy. The waste heat has now been used to reduce her drudgery. Smart. Look at further here. 1, 2, 3, and there is a fourth a bag of seed which is fumigated here. So here this is the wood which is used for trolleys. It's a curing mechanism. When wood is heated, it becomes strong. So those of you who deal with wood would know that. It's a curing mechanism. Here, because it receives a lot of rainfall, the fuel wood has to be dried. It is in Cherrapunji, so second shelf. Then here, if you have cheese or meat to store, dry and store them for future consumption, you put them there. And then fourth, for the seed. Now, different temperature gradients for different functional needs, not an ounce of energy going waste. There is some efficiency here, some frugality here. If every kitchen in Canada, North America, and the rest of the world gets redesigned so that when you have leftover vegetables, you have tomato leftover, gourd or something, make slices, put it on a shelf above the gas, about 1.5 feet. The waste heat that is going out from the cooking will dry those slices. Later on, you can consume them either as such or by frying them. They become very good snack actually, very nutritious. And you don't waste anything. Not even 1 gram of biomass should be wasted. And not 1 joule of energy should be wasted. So this is something coming from northeast of our country, some of the economically disadvantaged people, because they can't afford to waste energy, they have developed this mechanism. If all the kitchens of the world get redesigned, we will have to bless them and thank them for giving us this idea that waste heat could be used for many purposes, even for drying the clothes of the children. Sometime in rainy season, monsoon season, it becomes a problem how to dry the clothes of the children, these tiny infants. Put them on the shelf and they will get dried up. So a lot of things can be done by using this kind of approach. This is a Mitti Kool, one of the very popular innovation by Mansukh Bhai Prajapati, a double-walled structure of clay, no energy required to cool and keep vegetables fresh for many days. Similarly, a cooker of clay. Now let me show you some examples of children innovation. Because we work with children, we work with the students, we work with the informal sector innovators, we also work with the professionals and policymakers innovation. So let's see how do children innovate. And we are moving towards a frugal future. And different kinds of innovation we will find. For instance, this little kid is class 1, the youngest child to get an award from our former President Dr. Kalam for his idea. Class 1, 5-year-old, Chris Anand from Tamil Nadu. What did he do? He saw his father doing vacuum cleaning. So he has those shoes which make sound. You must have seen those shoes which children wear, children have, which make sound. So he asked his father, why do my shoes make sound? Father said, there must be a whistle. Now this kid knew what whistle does. So he said, that means air must be going out. Father said, yes. Then air must be coming in. Father said, yes. Then why can't my shoe become a vacuum cleaner? Wow. Earlier his mother complained that he dirtied the ground. Now mother says, Chris, please come and walk here. Can you imagine? He has observed, analyzed, abstracted, assimilated, applied. All these steps he has done at the age of 5. And there are such children everywhere in the world, not just in India, everywhere in the world, in Canada also. So I hope that as one of the fallout of today's talk, you will organize competition among children for ideas in all the schools of Winnipeg. And I will be very happy to publish an article in our magazine, Honeybee, which is lying there, about those children, because we want to publish, we can write about creative children all around the world. You know, the most redeeming thing I can tell about future is children are far less patient with the problems than our generation is. Let me give you an example. I have had pain in my lower back, and many of you might have suffered from that problem at some other stage. And the problem comes because we don't sit properly. Now, we know that we should sit properly. Many of you are not sitting properly just now. You know, your back is not properly pressed again. Some of you are bending forward, some of you are turning to the one side or the other side. So what this girl, Kulsum Rizvi, class 5, suggested that you have some pressure piezoelectric sensors on the back. There are 4 sensors, all the 4 points must be pressed. If they are not pressed, the chair will start singing song and will not let you work. You must first sit properly. Tarun gave another idea. He said, if you are working on a computer, and many times you must have noticed when we are excited or we are curious, we just bend forward and start working and keep on for hours. We work in that posture, which is very bad actually. So the camera in the computer will sense our posture. Posture is not right. Screen will go off. Message will come. Please sit properly. I will not let you work. What are these children telling us? These children are telling us that you adults would never change. You people don't learn. All of us know that we should sit properly, but we don't. And I have suffered from this 3 times in the last 10 years. Every 3rd year I have a pain, lower back episode. For 10 days I have to be on the bed. So naturally, there is a way in which they have learned that optimal quotient is not 0. These adult people must be coerced to behave properly. But where is it coming from? It's coming from children. This is a very fascinating example. Shanu was in class 8 at that time, 2 years ago, Bihar, Patna. She saw her grandfather who used to use walker. My wife, Sadhana, uses walker. And I did not think of this possibility, which she thought about. But it comes from a very poor family. So her grandfather who used walker could not use it on the staircase because walker does not have adjustable legs. Many of you might have seen, even in Canada, you have walkers, but they don't have adjustable legs. So she gave us an idea. Should not walker have adjustable leg? That's all she wrote. So National Innovation Foundation, which we set up in 2000 and now is the Institute of Department of Science and Technology, it engaged engineers and fabricators and said, look, this girl has given us this idea. We like this idea. Design a walker. So this walker was designed. Even our institute, one of the students had a problem. He was using it. And this was licensed on 24th of July this year to a company. And the license fee went to her bank account. And she will get $2 per walker as a royalty. And the company expects to sell at least 10,000 walkers this year. Youngest entrepreneur of our country, whose idea, just an idea, she did not make anything, just an idea, led to relief of problem to so many people around the world, not just in India. Everywhere you need a walker like that for old people, people who are balancing problem as my wife has and need such walkers. So I'm saying that children must not be seen as sink of advice. They are source of ideas. They can be source of ideas. And this is a new insight that we learned, that in our innovation ecosystem, our innovation framework, we never treated children as a partner. I'm saying, I'm pleading, please do that. You will be surprised by the ideas that you will get from them. These 3 girls suggested an idea. There are many times young people who use bicycle, motorcycle, they don't put helmet. So they said, motorcycle should not start unless you put helmet. So what do you need? You need a Wi-Fi system in the helmet, which unless pressed properly, will not let the motorcycle start. We got a prototype made. In this prototype, the motorcycle ignition is triggered by pressure points in the helmet. If you don't wear the helmet, motorcycle doesn't start. Simple. Safety, many lives will be saved now. So a lot of such innovations have come about. Now I will move to the students, technology students. In 2009, Techpedia.in was developed, which documents innovations by the students. We have got more than 200,000 technological innovations and ideas pooled, done by 700,000 students in India. And this is an example of that. A manual wheelchair which can climb the stairs by a student, undergraduate student at the time. Or a low-cost device for diagnosing pneumonia, another group of students. Or a device to transfer the load from head to the body for a worker. So you have a construction worker who has to carry bricks on his head. You must have seen this, Jason. And it's very painful. In railway station, you find in India a lot of coolies carrying load on their head. Head was not designed to carry load. It was designed to think. So why should you put it on the head? It pains in the neck and in the spinal cord. And these people suffer all their life because their productive life gets reduced. They don't work for too long a time. So this fellow, Lohar, designed this device where the load is distributed on the body. Very interesting solution. Didn't come from a large corporation. Didn't come from a large lab. Came from an ordinary student. And there are millions of people around the world who carry load on their head. Please understand that. It's not a small problem. It's not a problem only of India. Large part of the developing world faces this problem. Another interesting example of inclusive innovation. There are many deaf and dumb people, and we don't know their language, sign language, so we can't communicate with them. We would wish to make them friends. They would like us to be their friends, but how do? We don't understand their sign language. So this student team designed an image processing software in the phone. It will look at the sign language, convert into a text. We can understand what they're saying. They would be able to understand what we are saying, and we'll make friends with them. Our quality of life will go up. We'll have more, we will be able to experience feelings that deaf and dumb people have, which we otherwise don't know what they're thinking about many times. So inclusive development can come about in many ways. Herbal treatment for asthma. We also have a lot of traditional knowledge. And I think this is one area where a great deal can happen. A lot of Aboriginal communities in Canada have a lot of traditional knowledge. It's not enough to document them. We must also validate and value add in them, which will require blending formal and informal science. Many years ago, we set up a small lab in SRISTI which does this, and we have filed more than 660 patents in the name of common people, including tribal people. One of the first patents on herbal drug for typhoid was granted in US Patent Office last year by a tribal in Jharkhand. So if you go to a website, right, typhoid, Jharkhand or India, you will find that patent on uspto.gov. So there are solutions that people are developing which can stand the scrutiny of science and technology and can probably become a source of extremely frugal, affordable solutions, which many companies may not be able to develop. Similarly for animals, for increasing milk production. And in every such case where we develop these products, benefits go back to the communities whose knowledge made this product possible. Plant varieties, this has been licensed to a company, a non-exclusive license. Benefit goes to the breeder. There is a formula under which some goes to him, some to the community, some to the nature conservation, some for the Women Innovation Fund because we have lesser women innovation than otherwise. So there's a framework within which these benefits are shared. Now let me talk a little bit about the walks. So as I said, we walk every 6 months, looking for creative people from village to village, cross rivers and roads, mountains, plains. And last walk we had in Haryana, which is one of the most advanced state of our country, we found this beautiful design. This is the roof which is on this building. We went up, looked at this roof, and my God, this was a beautiful design. So cultural creativity in desert, this is a desert place on the border of Rajasthan and Haryana. Very enriched life. We may have a very woolly notion about how people live, how disadvantaged they are. They are poor in money, but they're not poor in mind. They're not poor in art. They're not poor in culture. It's a pity that we often think that poor people are poor everything. This very, very unfortunate term, bottom of the pyramid, as if poor people are at the bottom of all pyramids. They may be at the bottom of the economic pyramid, But are they at the bottom of cultural pyramid? Are they at the bottom of ethical pyramid? Are they at the bottom of innovation pyramid? Are they at the bottom of institutional pyramid? No. So why don't we then see the resource in which poor people are rich? And that became the point of departure in our work. So we look for such creative people all over the country. Beautiful artwork that they do. And the question that we often ask is, should we call these people unskilled? They are not unskilled. They are skilled people. So if market cannot value some skill, does it become irrelevant? That's a challenge to our pedagogy. That is a challenge to the professionals, to the academics. How do we create a framework in which our students, our scholars begin to understand and notice and valorize those skills that our communities have? Maybe sometimes they need upgradation. Maybe sometimes they need modernization a little bit. I'm not denying that possibility. But let us not deny the fact that such skills exist. In fact, there is no human being in the world, to my mind, who does not have some special skill. There is no redundancy in nature. Nature does not devise two things alike. It tries to generate uniqueness, originality, and therefore every individual is endowed with some special skill. If nothing else, a kid on the street can break this light by a single throw of a stone. And that means the person can be very good, can take a very good aim, and if you need somebody for athletics or somewhere where you need to throw a ball at the point, he could be a good bowler. That's the skill that person has. We have not realized that. We have not valorized that. We also have traditional food festival. We organize every year, December 20th to 22nd. We will have this food festival at IMA campus, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, where I teach. And you have stalls of food, organic food, a lot of art. So we invite tribal artists to paint. This is our Pithora painting from Panchmahal. And I'm sure if we organize similar festivals here, it will enrich our life. It may do some good to them, but it will do more good to us. We'll become more humble. We will realize that there's something to be learned from these people. So a lot of markets are created. There's a database at our website on sustainable agriculture, open access. You don't have to sign up, you don't have to register, you don't have to put your details, just use it, share it. And remember, you should not look at this database only as a list of solutions, but look at it as heuristics, new ways of thinking. To give an example of a heuristic, we were walking in Kutch, and it took about half an hour to tell the community there that, look, they should not use chemical pesticides, this and that harm. And I was telling them how they can use plant-based pesticide. So this farmer, after half an hour, said, Professor, we understood what you're saying. So I said, what am I saying? You're telling us that those plants which animals don't eat are the source of potential pesticide. One line, that farmer summarized what I took half an hour to say. Why don't animals eat? Because they are toxic. What do I need for pest control? Toxicity. Why do I need to buy it? Now this principle can apply in Canada also. You will find plants around the small farms, and I'm told there's a very good program that you have where small farms are sought to be revitalized and made viable. Just tell these farmers, look for plants which animals don't eat. These are the sorts of potential pesticide. We don't have to go far. Everywhere nature has provided such plants because it wants to protect those plants. So there are a large number of such heuristics underlying this database which one can use. We also have a database of common property resource institutions, indigenous institutions. So how Sami reindeers in northern Arctic Circle, in northern north of Greenland, when they have to manage the patches of grass which come up after the snow melts, how many reindeers should graze on which patch, for how long, there are rules about it. A younger reindeer cannot go very far, should be allowed first to graze on a first patch. The older one can go farther. There are different rules that they have evolved. Like that, we have pulled these institutions all in open source, use them, share them with the local communities which are facing challenges in the institutional development, and who knows, it might lead to some new designs. We also wish, and at the University of Guelph also I requested, and I'm going to request here, think of creating innovation clubs, Honeybee Network Innovation Clubs. These clubs will do 4 things: search innovations, spread innovations, celebrate innovations, invite innovators to the classroom, and sense the unmet needs. Now you have about 10,000 students. The Vice Chancellor told me today that there are about 10,000 students in the university. If each of them could sense one unmet need of a community, we will have a map of social unmet needs. Doesn't matter if we don't have a solution for them today. Someday we might have. Someday somebody will develop a solution. At least we cannot take the excuse that we didn't know. The whole moral environment will change because now we know there's a problem. We need to solve it. So the ethical fulcrum of our educational system will shift, make us more responsible, make us more impatient with the problems, make us more aware, and therefore make us more authentic in our search for solutions. So I appeal that we could consider this possibility of creating this mechanism. So finally, falling is not failure. You know, in a circus, you have these acrobats who do various exercises. And then there's a safety net below, of course. Safety net of kinship relationship, safety net of our neighborhoods, safety net of our ability to deal with people in different ways. So how do we create that environment where people don't just fail? And one way to do that is to encourage people to take risk. How do they take risk? To move from microfinance to microventure finance. You search on Google microfinance, you will find tons of literature. You search on microventure finance, you wouldn't find much. 97, when Kirit was around, he was the first director of GYAN, Grassroots Innovation Augmentation Network. We created this concept of microventure finance. People have ideas, they have innovations, but they don't have risk capital. If we provide them risk capital, they might become entrepreneurs. They might become entrepreneurs, but they may fail. But failure is not important if we are able to absorb that cost. Every area of new technologies, biotechnology, information technology, without venture capital, they would be nowhere. How come that venture capital is important for those technologies, but not important for the small innovations? Of course it is important. We created a microventure innovation fund. So if you go to our website, nifindia.org/MVIF, you will find a detail of all the investments we made, single signature, no collateral, more than 75% money came back. Because people realize that this is a good cause to serve. Finally, what kind of incentive structure we create for promoting innovations? First submission is that we need to think of a portfolio. Any one incentive is not good enough. So you can have material, non-material, individual, and collective. Most of the time when I ask this question in my class, first reaction is, sir, obviously material, individual will be the most important ones. I said, well, wait a minute. I give them an assignment. They have to list down the incentives they want for themselves to make them motivated. And next day what I find, non-material individual and non-material collective are much longer list than the material individual. And this cannot be learned just by talking. People have to do experiments. And we realize that in our life, a good word by a colleague, recognition by the society, appreciation by the people for whom we work is much more motivating than few dollars here and few dollars there. And yet, we have emphasized far too much on monetary incentives and far too little on non-monetary incentives. We need to think of a portfolio of these kind of incentives. We, of course, try to make this triangle possible: innovation, investment, enterprise. Our argument is that many times innovators don't always make good entrepreneurs. But there are entrepreneurs who don't have innovative ideas. And there are investors who don't have both these skills. They don't have innovative ideas and they don't have entrepreneurial ideas, but they have money to invest. So how can we link all the three? And this is the last example where this drug for eczema was developed. 6 communities gave us the knowledge about a skin disease. We pulled it in our lab, made a product. This company launched it, Herbvate, and all of them were invited at the launch. They get a royalty every year from the sales. We have a G2G model where Grassroots Innovations enable to find global markets. In all these countries, we have sold products. And from these 62 countries, we found inquiries from Rwanda, from Uganda, from Egypt, Chile, Colombia, South Africa. These are the people who deserve credit because they discovered that we have some database of frugal innovations which may be useful to them. We didn't know them. We didn't go to them. They came to us. That means there is a global market for grassroots innovations, which means globalization is not only having one phase, which is large corporations selling things to small people. Small people can sell things to global market. Reverse globalization, and that's the way to go in future. G2G, grassroots to global. We have B2B, we have B2C. Now we should have G2G. So finally, mind on the margin are not marginal minds. Give me a place to stand and I'll move the world. That's what SRISTI says. These are the different institutions which have been created. SRISTI, Honeybee Network, Gyan, and National Innovation Foundation. Let me close by saying creativity counts, knowledge matters, innovations transform, incentives inspire, but not just material incentives, also non-material incentives, not just individual incentives, but also collective incentives. Thank you so much.